those who are attending, although as I've looked through it, it's mostly, there are a couple of members of the public, but mostly it's us as town officials and board members and so on that are here this evening. Just the same, just briefly, every year one of the primary goals of both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance are to maintain a reasonable taxing scheme in Thomaston to continue to make things affordable. And once again, I believe we've achieved that goal. In fact, we've achieved it in spades, so to speak, this year. It is, we have to credit everybody. We have to credit all our department heads for working very hard to bring in good, responsible budgets that we can all live with and maintain service with. And at the same time, those officials who get involved to really work at it hard to bring these numbers together to present a good tax package for the town of Thomaston that can provide the services that we really need and or desire. I'd like to also just state that with all that said, and even with the reasonable budget, we are moving forward with capital in infrastructure projects. We have a couple of road projects going, and we're, as you can see, we're continuing to do the kinds of things that we need to do here in Thomaston to make it a good community to live in. I have one statement I'd like to read before I turn it over to George and the board. This came from Standard & Poor's Global Rating. Now, Standard & Poor's Global Rating is, as probably many of you know, it's a rating system that looks at us for how we are financially, how stable is the town of Thomaston financially. And we've been able to receive and have continued to receive a AA rating, which is considered very good for a town of our size. But there's a quote that came from the individual who examined our financial status, and I will quote, and it says, "We believe the town's recently strengthened reserve levels, a strong management team, and a relatively resilient tax base will allow Thomaston to weather the economic and financial uncertainties caused by COVID-19 pandemic over the next 6 to 12 months. I think that's really a compliment to everybody who in this town who works hard to keep us going and to keep us financially stable. I think it only augments the fact that having a good fund balance is extremely important, particularly in these times. At this time, I thank those who have attended, and I'm going to turn this over now to Chairman Seaborn to present and have discussion regarding the public hearing and budgets. George. George.
I had to unmute myself. Thanks, Ed. Before we start, I just wanted to recognize the lady that just puts it all together for us, and that's Tracy Decker, our finance director. She does a wonderful job, and we appreciate her services to the Board of Finance and to the town, obviously. Also, I wanted to thank all the members of the Board of Finance, Adam Silverman, Mike Maddow, Steve Turner, Rich Cilio, and Luke Freemuth. They're all volunteers, and it's not an easy job making decisions on the budget, as we all know. A special thanks to Stacy Sefcik, our zoning enforcement officer, who has been really putting all of these meetings together. We greatly appreciate that. It's almost an every night thing, it seems to me. I'd like to also mention the Board of Education and what they've done this year to offer to help out. Obviously, with the COVID-19 pandemic, the schools have been closed, and as a result, there's been some savings. And the Board of Education is going to have a surplus. They've offered to go ahead and submit their budget with no increase for next year, using their surplus to pay down on some of next year's expenses. So I want to thank the Board of Education, Francine Koss, our superintendent, and Todd Benson, who is their finance director. And finally, again, the selectmen for your work in putting these budgets together. This has been a, needless to say, a crazy year. The pandemic has saved some money from the Board of Education, unfortunately, but we do not yet have the final impact from the state of Connecticut and what they might do to us down the road. I just want to mention that in what Ed said in the beginning about our bond rating, a lot of that has to do with our surplus, our undesignated fund balance. And believe me, with this, with what may be coming down the road from the state of Connecticut, I'm very happy that we have a healthy undesignated fund that's approximately 15.1%, I believe. Is that correct, Tracy?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm trying to figure out how to make this proposed budget open up. Oh, I see it. Okay. So just, okay, that's fine. So as you can see that there's been a very small increase in our dollar amount of budget. When we look at the added increase in revenues from taxes, our grand list growing this year, we're actually going to be able to, and with the offer of the Board of Education to have no increase, it is going to result in a decrease in our mill rate. And Stacy, you provided, if I can find it now, you provided us with some discussion points that I asked you, and they've been submitted. There's a few things that I want to talk about on this budget. There were two questions we had in our budget hearings concerning the volunteer fire department. One was a wage increase for the officers of the fire department, and they had asked for, I believe, 154% increase. We asked to have them get some information to us. I got some information from Tim Quinn a couple of days ago, and it appears as if the salaries from some surrounding towns, Watertown, Prospect, Middlebury, Terryville, do pay their chief and assistant chiefs more in the way of compensation than the town of Thomaston. And that's not to say that we all have to do exactly the same thing. I wanted to talk a little bit about that before we vote on this proposed budget, because there's three changes that we did not make to the budget, and I want to discuss what those three changes are. One is the compensation to the chief and the assistant chiefs of the fire department. The second one has to do with their insurance. We requested information on their insurance, and I just received it yesterday afternoon. And I did not have an opportunity, nor did our insurance have an opportunity to compare the two. It's about a 50-page document, and I wish we had had this sooner so we could have actually sat down and looked at both policies, but that's just not the case. That's one item. And then finally, there was another item that was raised, and that had to do with the ambulance corps booking their machinery, equipment, and repairs to the building. For the past 3 years, we haven't had any expenditures, and yet we were booking some money towards those. So I suggested that Stacy put in a placeholder on those two items so that we don't lose track that there is some building improvements that may come down the road someday, and also some machinery and equipment purchases. I suggested $500 be put in there as a placeholder, but to let the ambulance corps know that in our Board of Finances, that whenever there's an extraordinary expense that wasn't anticipated, we would certainly entertain that at the Board of Finance to provide them with the funds to do whatever work that they have to do. And so those are the three things that we didn't put into the budget this time. We will be having a Board of Finance meeting immediately following this budget meeting. And at that time, I would like to address those three items. We didn't receive any input from the public. I don't know if anyone's here from the ambulance corps or from the fire department that would like to discuss any one of those items. Anybody would like to speak up? Hello?
Oh, hi.
Hey,
George.
okay.
Everyone is unmuted on my end.
I'm not able to hear whoever's speaking.
Did we even get their name? Whoever's speaking?
Is that Francine? Okay, no, that's not Francine.
I cannot understand what's being said.
Is it someone's background or?
I'm wondering if it's background.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
Is the only one I see on that might be from the fire department would be JP, and his mic's off at the moment, and he's nodding his head yes. Outside of that, I see no one else that you would have mentioned, George, regarding either ambulance or fire.
I haven't.
Oh, it's Beth Campbell. Rick O'Connell's on from the ambulance commission with me. He has no questions or comments.
Okay, thank you, Beth.
Thank you,
You're
Beth.
welcome.
George, can you hear us?
Now I can.
So it's my understanding you got the stipends that are given to Terryville,
What?
Middlebury, and Watertown.
I went down to see Timmy and picked up the.
Can we get that person muted?
Yeah,
whoever that is?
if somebody has a conversation or a TV or something going on in the background, if you could please mute yourself. There's a female voice we're hearing in the background.
Can you mute everybody and then we can each unmute ourselves?
That would be the way to go, Stacy.
How's that?
Much better.
Yeah.
Fine job, Adam. Where are you, in Rhode Island?
Yes, sir.
Tell. I slept right in front of that TV. So George, my understanding, you picked it up. We got one additional one today from Woodbury. The chief gets $11,000 and the deputy chief gets $7,000. Deputies, I should say. There's a couple of them. Obviously the reason for us, one of them is succession planning. A lot of people don't want to volunteer, as don't want to get involved. Jimmy's getting up there in age. And then, we're going to have a situation with Glenn Clark, where he works for the town, and when he retires, based upon the pension, he's going to be ineligible to take that position. So,
Looking at
when we look at this, we look at the chief. Not only he probably runs the second largest department in the town. Yes, it's volunteer, but he's still dealing with 60 plus members. And not only does he have to do the internal workings and deal with the state and OSHA and everybody else, and all the training that goes along with it, but he also has to be the department's cheerleader. He has to go to all the picnics, he has to go to parades, he has to do all that stuff. So, we just feel that he's not in line even close to anybody else in the community, especially for the things that he has to do. And at the same time, we want to start to encourage some of the younger members that are active and involved to maybe give a consideration to start going to these classes, getting their fire officer 1, getting their fire officer 2, and everything they need to ascend to this job when Jimmy or whoever's an assistant chief goes. So really that's the driving force on this. It's not, Jimmy works hard and past chiefs have worked hard, but it's getting harder and harder to get people to volunteer. And we want to try to encourage the younger guys a little bit to step up and start taking these classes. So that's part of the push for this.
Okay, thanks. As far as
the regular glass.
insurance, anybody from the
glass
fire
that's
department want to
not clear.
address the insurance?
Okay.
Please
Please mute yourself.
For us. Let me get.
Okay. So, Jerry, you want to talk about if you have anything you want to add to the fact that you would like to stay with the present policy you have?
Jerry,
Are you?
You have to unmute. JP, unmute. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, we got Jimmy O'Neill coming in who can better speak upon that. I think the major concern is that apples to apples is really where we're at. So we'll have the chief come over and talk to you.
Hello. Just the insurance stuff. Yeah, where's my, that's right here. Yeah, go ahead, George. What do you have for me? I apologize to everybody. I am on a conference call as well with the Litchfield County Chiefs on this COVID stuff. So I'm trying to bounce 2 things at once at the same time. I apologize for that.
All right. We just wanted to, as you know, I just got this yesterday afternoon.
Right.
And so we haven't had an opportunity to be able to compare the 2 policies. I know one of the items that was put down by your agent, that the Hartford policy has an age limit. We got a letter a few days ago from them saying there was no age limit. So we're going to be comparing these 2 policies, and I don't know if you know of some other things that you want us to be looking at. I know that
I'm kind of with all due respect, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, because I just saw the Hartford policy, so I've just started to go through that and try to compare. I had not seen that up until the other day. So
I think that was sent, according to that, it was sent to you, what, a couple of weeks ago, Ed?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. I sent it over to Timmy at least a week ago. I know it's comprehensive, Jimmy. There's a lot to look at in these policies.
Right.
And that's the problem right now, is that we have not on our end, or until recently you on your end, had both policies to look at. I still don't know that we actually have your policy, or if George does.
yes,
The actual policy endorsements, not just the summation.
No,
That's what everybody's going to need going forward.
that's the full policy. George has a copy of the full policy.
Ed, I just got it yesterday afternoon.
Yes, you did, George. I know that. Like I said, I was across the state when I got the call. You were looking for it, so I made a couple phone calls to get the copy.
Well, just in all honesty, we told you we were looking for this information a couple of weeks back. I went to see Timmy and told him I was upset because we didn't have the policy.
And
And
I thought you guys did. I thought the town received a copy of it. I was not aware that you didn't.
yeah, no, we didn't have one. So anyway, I don't think there's anything we can do this year. But I'm going to have your policy and the town's Kerma policy, put them together, and we're going to look at everything in there and see just what you guys are getting for, I think it was around, it's over $4,000, and what we could get for Kerma for free.
And George,
Yeah,
I'm not opposed to that. I'll be more than happy to help you in any way with that.
okay.
I'm not opposed to comparing apples and apples. And if there's something in there that's, if again, it's the current policy has revised a little bit and it's better, or it's the same, I don't think, I can't speak for the board, but for myself, I'm not going to object to it.
No. So we'll take a look at it, and I don't think we can do it this year, though, but we're going to do it right away.
That's fine.
Okay.
I think that's fair, George.
Okay.
I mean, the policy goes back to the 80s with Guerrero when Kippy was chief. And that's where that stuff, where this policy got started. It was initially, just quickly, it was a supplemental, is a disability to cover things that were non-Kerma related, and an additional cost for disability, because Kerma only pays so much a week towards disabilities. And we had a couple people get injured and almost lost their houses. And when they almost lost their houses, they said, you know what, we're just not going to volunteer, because we can't afford to, you know, get hurt, lose our money, and not be able to make our mortgage payments. So that's where that policy came about. Was part of that's a supplemental income policy to maintain the policies.
Right. And frankly, my position would be, if this is a better policy and we look at the plus and minuses of it, if they're not the same, then I have no problem staying with this policy. But as a Board of Finance, we have to look at both.
I'm not arguing with you, George. I agree 100%. I'm not disagreeing at all.
Okay.
I'll work with you any way I can to help you out. I'm not objecting to it.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So those take care of, I guess that's the input we need from on those three issues. Is there anybody in the, well, let me go through basically our 2021 budget. The total budget at this point, there may be a couple of minor changes at the final Board of Finance meeting, but the total budget is $27,277,305, which is an increase in spending of only $35,099. Debt service is the same. Our capital outlays are slightly higher by about 25,000. The Board of Education is actually dropping 41,701 over last year. And the town's side of the budget is going up $50,874. So basically, there's almost no change to this budget, but because of revenues, it's going to impact our mill rate. And our fund balance, which is our undesignated funds, we have $4,340,492. We used $140,000 of our surplus last year. We then bought a minibus for the seniors and the disabled this past year, and that was $58,000, which we used the surplus for. So far in this budget, we have nothing that's being proposed to come out of surplus. That would leave us with a 15.19% fund balance. Even though that seems high, our bonding people have told us that that is something that the bonding companies are looking for. And surely tonight we saw where we've gotten now a AA rating for our bonds, which mean the borrowing that we're going to be doing for roads coming up, we're going to get a much better interest rate on. And we may need that balance because coming up, we don't know what's going to happen with the state of Connecticut. They're going to be short on revenues for this year, and there may be some of their reimbursements may be cut. We just don't know yet. Nobody knows yet. When we look for the value of a mill in Thomaston to decide what our tax is going to be, a mill is $560,588. When we go and look at what is being proposed now with maybe a couple of little minor changes, we're at 36.14 mils. And Tracy, what would that be a decrease of on mills? Do you know?
Sorry, it's a 0.39 mil decrease.
So a little over a third of a mil. And I think that's going to impact on a home that's $200,000 and assessed at $140,000. It's going to be a little over a $50 decrease in taxes. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So the budgets this year is excellent. We have some concerns about next year. We don't know what the state's going to be doing to us. The Board of Education may have some money left over. It'll go into their surplus fund and will be held to be used next year. And I just want to mention that the monies that I sat down and went over with Todd Benson and Francine costs do not include the negotiated settlement with the transportation company. So that money is not included in the reduction and the use of monies towards next year's budget. So they should have a surplus beyond what they're using at this point. And that would go into the fund that we've set up for them, for education. We don't know where that's going to be, but it's hopefully going to be somewhere around 90,000. At this time, I'd like to ask anyone if they want to comment on the budget this year. I know, Luke, you were concerned about the fact that we're probably going to have a bump next year for sure. And I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
No, George, we've been through a lot this year. A lot of things are going on. I appreciate the Board of Ed doing what they've done to save where they can this year and to help offset costs in the future years. Look forward to working collaboratively with them, as we move forward. They've been, under Francine's guidance, they've been a great partner with us, making sure we get things done and get things done in a cost-effective manner, and knowing where we are and where they are and where this country is, just hope we can keep working together. That's all.
Thanks. And they have been great. I'll tell you, Francine and the Board of education have been coming in with budgets that are really lean, and we appreciate it. Any other members want to comment on this year's budget? I think this may be the
I'd like to
first
mention-
tax. Go ahead, Mike.
You know, I'm grateful that we've been prudent enough to put the money away into our fund balance, because as you had already mentioned, it is helping our bond rating, and on top of that, you know, we're in some unprecedented times right now, and I think we have a rainy day coming up, and hopefully we won't have to use that excess fund balance, but at least we know it's there if we need it, because who knows what's going to happen next year or the year after with the state, considering what's happening with COVID-19. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
George, Steve Turner, I just would, again, the fact that we have that fund balance, it's going to give us some options that a lot of other towns aren't going to have to make. I mean, we'll have hard choices, but we'll be able to make those choices because we have those fund balance. We can cushion the decisions we have to make, and that's because of the fund balance and because of the, you know, the fiscal prudence we've engaged in. So, you know, and again, kudos to the Board of Ed. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Anyone else?
Bueller?
Are you gonna do public comment?
Yes?
I
Okay.
guess, I'm sorry, George, just
Yes.
one last comment. I do work in the financial sector. I work for a large industrial manufacturing business, and in the treasury group. So I'm working a lot with the banks, trying to figure out banking and liquidity as we go through this whole COVID pandemic. And I will say, the company I happen to work for is a company that's been around for over 160 years, and they've weathered storms like this before. And usually because of that fiscal prudence that Steve talked about, and managing debt and managing reserve levels. And I'd say that the company I work with has been very successful in that manner. And so has the town of Thomaston and our board and Ed and his group, and ensuring that we're not only managing the year to year, but looking forward and ensuring that we're in a good fiscal position, you know, with our fund balance and with our borrowings and with our debt levels. And you know, I commend the people that came before me in this board and this board for doing what they've done to be able to manage the debt, the reserve levels and spending. So I think that we're in a great position to,
I can't hear. Okay.
Unfortunately have to deal with what we're going to deal with, but we've positioned ourselves well, and I think that's a very positive thing to take from where we are right now.
Thank you, Luke. I just want to mention, if you want to talk, that's fine, but while other people are talking, I'd appreciate it if you would mute yourself if you're carrying on a conversation in your house, because believe it or not, we pick it up and it makes it hard to hear the speaker.
Yes.
So if you have people that are speaking, please mute yourself so that it does not disturb this meeting. Now, are there any people that would like to speak from the general public about this budget?
Yes.
If they would identify themselves, please.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Diane, you can be heard. Announce who you are.
I just want to say, first I want to give a kudo to Ed. I don't know how he kept on our recycling cost. I think that was amazing considering what all the towns are going through. It was a lesser of an increase this year than last year. Thanks, Ed. And a big kudos to the Board of Finance for all the work in this tough time. And thank you for keeping our mill rate down. It's greatly appreciated. The Board of Education, I still have some big question marks, but this is not the time or place, I guess, because you've already thought they have a very good budget, but there are some questionable points. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Anyone else in the audience that would like to comment?
You can also access the chat feature if you'd like to ask a question that way as well.
Thanks, Stacy.
I have a question.
Okay,
As I was perusing this budget, I realized that the line item for treasurer is like $192,000. And I never realized it before because we have a town treasurer who doesn't make $192,000. I'm just wondering why it's on that line. And I'm sure it includes the whole Tracy's whole department, but why is it listed under treasurer? It's very misleading.
Stacy, Tracy, do you want to answer that?
It's what the office has been called as long as I've worked here and long before I began. It's the treasurer's office. That's what we refer to ourselves as. We report to the treasurer ultimately. So we are part of Kristen's department technically. So that's why it's listed as the treasurer.
I still think it's
Okay,
just very
thank you.
misleading to think that treasurer's making that amount of money. Maybe we should correct it.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, if there are no other questions, what I'm going to do is entertain, well, we don't have to, this is just a hearing. So I'm going to close the hearing and the Board of Finance will then go into its meeting to adopt the budget and the mill rate and to make any adjustments to the budget that they may care to make at this time. So I'd like to, at this point, adjourn the public hearing and call to order the special meeting of the Board of Finance for the purpose of adopting a budget and setting a mill rate. And we have one other item on the agenda, which is to employ the auditor. And why don't we get that out of the way, or I might forget it. So Tracy, if you want to tell us who you would prefer to work with and who we've been working with.
Yep, we've been using PKF O'Connor Davies out of Weathersfield. We actually were using the partner from that firm. He was at a different firm prior to that. We have a lot of continuity with him. He brings in different managers to have a different perspective, but he still maintains the historical information. So he really is a great benefit, great asset to the town. So I would recommend staying with them. He's asked for a 2% increase in the fee rather than a 3%. He just let me know that the other day. So we actually can reduce that budget by $800 when we get to that part of the budget. That's who I would recommend, PKF O'Connor Davies.
And Tracy, I didn't catch the name of the auditor right now.
It's PKF O'Connor Davies.
PKF, P like in Peter?
Yes.
PKF.
O'Connor.
Yep.
Davies.
Davies.
Mm-hmm.
And Tracy, this is the auditor that we've been using, or we used last year? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, I had a conversation with them today. They'd like to start their preliminary work. They understand that it's probably not a great time to be coming into town hall. So we're going to start as soon as they're officially engaged, we're going to start working on ways to scan documents into them so that we can get started on the audit as quickly as possible, knowing that this may be a weird year as far as how much they can come and go.
I'm gonna ask Luke a question. Luke, in employing an auditor, do you suggest that auditors be changed periodically, maybe every 5 years or 10 years? Or?
Yeah, I think generally audit partners more than auditors. You generally have audit partners are rotated to ensure that you have new relationships, because the relationship is more so with the partner than it is with the actual firm. And Tracy, I think this is a new firm as of 2 years ago or last year.
The firm that we were with prior to that sold their municipal practice to this firm. So it's a new firm.
Right.
That's the same auditor. We've had him for about 3 years, maybe 3 or 4 years. Prior to that, we had a different auditor at that other firm, the one
right.
that got out.
So George,
changed.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Tracy. I don't mean to cut you off.
That's okay.
George, I'd say generally it's the partner more than the firm. And I know that I guess we've changed firms, but the partners, it was through acquisition. But I'd say as long as we have consistent turnover with partners, that we can maintain that independence that we would look for. Obviously you want a good standing relationship to continue to do good business, but you also want to ensure that you have that independence between the auditor and the town. But Tracy obviously manages that relationship. I defer a little bit to her to make sure that she's comfortable that we continue to maintain that independence. But there's plenty of firms out there if we wanted to go looking, and I think that we actually looked at a few last year or the year before and elected to stay with these guys. But I say that right now I don't feel uncomfortable with the firm or the relationship.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say about PKF? If not, I'd entertain a motion to employ the audit firm of PKF O'Connor Davies and at an increase from last year of 2%.
So moved.
Second.
I think, okay. Rich, you seconded it and Steve moved it, or Mike moved it?
I moved it.
I think Luke seconded.
Luke second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. The next thing I'd like to do is those 3 issues we discussed. I'd like to talk about them. And then one other thing. But as far as the insurance goes, I think unfortunately there's just no way we can compare what the existing policy is and our PERMA policy. So I would think that we probably could go ahead, keep everything the way it is. It's already been put in the budget. And then have a group come in and sit down and tell us the differences between these 2 policies, and then we can better make a decision, I think. I just can't, with the shortness of this time, I couldn't get together on this.
That makes sense, George.
Yeah.
George, can it be switched sometime during the year if we decided we wanted to?
I don't know when these policies come up. That's one thing we could look at. Sure.
I mean, if it's apples to apples and, it's KERMA, I mean, we may free up that revenue, or at least we'd free that up to maybe look at some raises possibly, or other things the department might need as well. So that's just, I think we do need to dig in on those policies, and that's just one direction we can go in with that, that money,
Okay, so we'll leave that the same. Is that all right with everybody?
I agree.
Yes.
All right, good. As far as the ambulance, that 2 lines, what we thought we'd do is put a $500 placeholder in each one, just so they didn't come off the line. So they're always there to remind us. But with the understanding that if something comes up, that the ambulance commission would certainly come to us and we would look at that. I just don't want to keep budgeting $5,000 or $6,000 and not spending it. So any thoughts on that?
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Great.
Makes sense to me.
Same here.
Okay. So Tracy will put that $500 placeholder in there for those two lines.
Yes.
Okay. And now the raises, what they gave me this week was Terryville. We already saw Watertown. They gave me Terryville, Prospect, Middlebury, and now tonight we got Woodbury. I talked to Timmy about this yesterday. I did call the mayor of Terryville, and he confirmed those numbers. So I would like to use the numbers that the fire department gave us. Terryville, I'll just say the chief was at 5,000 with the assistants at 2,500. The chief, and I guess Prospect has just one assistant, was 6,500 each. Middlebury, the chief was 13,000. Woodbury, the chief is 11, and assistant 7. Tracy, do you have the exact amounts we have right now for those?
What he has budgeted? He has budgeted 10,500.
Okay, well, is that what's budgeted right now?
Right, that was their request. Yes, what they're currently making is $4,080.
So what it is right now, not in the budget, but what we're paying right now is how much? 4,080?
Yes.
Okay. And they wanted it increased to 10.5.
Yes.
Okay. Thoughts on that, everyone?
I'm sorry, George, it was 4,080. How is that split between chief and?
I want to say the two assistants were making somewhere around 600 each. In that range.
And so the chief was making 3 something?
Yeah, I don't know if Jimmy's still here or JP.
I think Glenn is here.
The chief was making 2,900 and the two assistants were making like 583.
583.
I think that we need to throw some more money at this. You know, I don't know how much more. I'm thinking maybe we bring the assistants up to 1,000 and maybe, you know, increase Jimmy's by the same amount, maybe 500. You know, I mean, I get it. I mean, you know, it's the demands on the chief are onerous. There's no doubt about that. And it doesn't minimize what all the other, volunteers do, but there's an extra level of scrutiny and education and accountability that goes into what we do, you know, with our volunteer department, and that falls on them. I mean, I wish it could be more, but you know, it again, based upon the time that, you know, these guys are putting in, I think, you know, again, I wish it could be as much as, you know, everywhere else, but I just think we need to give them, you know, at least, you know, give them something.
This is something that can be looked at on an annual basis. It was certainly sticker shock when we saw a 154% increase. And that's why we asked to see what other places were doing, and other places are doing more than we are.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to see some increase, and I think we visit it each year. So this is not just gonna, be something we do tonight and then forget about it for the next 10 years.
George,
Yep.
my thought is, so they were asking for 10-5. Do we recall what that split would have been?
JP, you have that?
Yes, the split would have been 6,500 for the chief and 2,000 for each of the assistant chiefs.
And what, George, what did we say Terryville was doing right now?
Everyone's a little different.
Yeah.
Again, to use Jimmy's phrase, apples to oranges.
Right.
A lot of places have pensions. We don't have the pension. We have call in place of a pension. Call. We give out gas. I think a tank a month. So that's maybe $500 a year. Who knows? So there's different things, but the actual money is definitely less.
I think we should bring the assistants up to at least $1,000, and we bring Jimmy up. He's at 2,900. Again, 3,500 and 1,000 and 1,000, and then we look at it again next year, or look at it, and maybe we get creative to incentivize it another way as well too.
I keep thinking about what they were talking about with recruitment, and I really feel that that's valid. I was actually thinking 5,000 for the chief and 1,500 for the two assistants.
Yeah, I wouldn't balk at 15-15-4.
And I was thinking increase them, each assistant by $100 a month, so 1,200 a year, and increase the chief by 200 a month, or 24. So roughly, we're all thinking in the same kind of ballpark.
Yeah.
Well, heavy is the head that wears the crown, though, too. I guess the assistants are woefully underpaid, right? Let's face it. And so, they're getting more of an increase than Jim would be getting. So yeah, if we're headed there, then I guess maybe we split the difference. I think Luke, who said 5? Mike, and I was at 3,500. So I think Luke, you had 4.
I said 15-15-4. Yeah.
All right, sold. I'm with
right in the middle.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Luke.
Yeah,
I'm with you. Yep.
It's consistent with what everybody else is doing, and we like George said, it's something we look at every year. We share our information and understand what everybody else is doing, and try to make sure that we're marketable, but we're also our own town, and we have to do what's right for us as well. So
that makes sense to me, and I like the idea of looking at it every year, because we've certainly let this be stagnant for too long.
And again, at the end of the day, we look at the KERMA policies. We may pick up some revenue to really, or at least free up some revenue if we took those policies, and hopefully the KERMA policy is apples to apples, and or maybe even price it out again. I don't know. Maybe there's a cheaper number there too. When's the last time it went out to bid? It creeps up, and so.
But I'm not sure I have a consensus here. It sounds to me like the chief is going to be somewhere between 4 and 5.
I think it's 4.
And maybe the assistants around 1,500.
Yep.
So George, Steve Turner, I came around to, I'm with Luke. I think 4, 15, and 15. I think it's a responsible increase. Again, I wish it could be more, but I think that it just says that we do hear you down there. We do value what you're doing. And it does bring them, again, brings them up. And, and again, I just think it gives us some more room going forward too.
So let me entertain a motion. And I'll throw this out. If you want to talk about it, we'll have discussion. But entertain a motion that the chief would be paid amongst other things, because they do have other things too, but the salary portion would be 4,000 for the chief and 1,500 each for the assistants.
So moved.
I'll second.
Who's that? Who moved it?
That was Mike.
Okay, and who was the second, please?
Second, Steve Turner.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Tracy,
Got it. A reduction of 3,500 from 10,500 to 7,000.
so a reduction of 3,500. And how much was the reduction on the ambulance lines?
One line was 3,250 and the other line was 1,500. So the total of those two is 4,750.
4,750. Okay. And 3,500. So we're going to be reducing the presented budget by 8,250.
Correct.
Okay. Can you give me the number for the budget with those two changes?
Yep. The budget total will be 27,268,555 with a mill rate of 36.13.
36.13.
Yep.
And that would be a reduction in the mill rate of
0.4.
Excuse me?
0.4.
0.4 mils.
Correct.
Okay. Are there any other adjustments that anybody would like to make to the budget?
So we're cutting
Okay.
taxes.
We're going to be cutting taxes by 0.4 of a mil. Could you give us an idea, Tracy, on a home valued at 100 and assessed at 140, what that would mean is a reduction in taxes?
Yeah, it's a 1.11% reduction or a $56.63 decrease in the tax bill from last year.
I'm sorry, $56.63.
63 cents.
Okay. I also, just as an aside, Ed and I were talking earlier, and it looks like we're going to keep our fingers crossed on this, but it looks like some of our contracts for the new sewer project and road reconstructions may be coming under budget. And so we may have some extra money at the end of this project. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, but that's at least a good sign.
Capital improvements.
If I may interject, this is Ed Mon. If I may interject, George is exactly correct. All the numbers came in and we've awarded contracts for lower than what the engineer estimated, and fairly sizably, or fairly considerably, I should say, lower than what was originally estimated. We may well find we have additional funds that we could reallocate for additional projects, be they roads, sidewalks, pending dam infrastructure that we're going to have to address next year. But anyways, a variety of options.
It's just another tool in our toolbox that we can look at.
How much lower did they come in, Ed?
Off the top of my head, I can't exactly say, Adam, but I'm going to say easily between the two, $500,000 or slightly more between the two projects.
That is not chump change.
No.
No, it is not. And
That's
even with
good.
some change orders, Steve, should they come down, for the unforeseen that ultimately always crops up, we still should be in very good shape.
Ed, this is Mike, do you recall what the dam project, the price was?
I
on
don't
that?
have a hard number on that one yet, but that one can be somewhere close to, let me put it this way, anywhere from 800,000 to maybe $1 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's difficult to say, and we won't really know until we get that out to bid either.
Thanks.
That's one we're not going to address this year. We'll be looking to deal with that in the following fiscal year.
Now, we need to see how this all pans out anyway. You never know what you're gonna find underneath some of these roads. So,
Absolutely correct.
Do we know when Hickory Hill is gonna start?
I wish I could tell you an affirmative, a definitive time, Adam. All I can say to you, it's been its last leg forever. Every time we send something up to DOT, they send us back yet another request. But we are at the juncture where we should be getting a letter to advertise, which is the next step in the process, so we can go out to bid. It's been 2 weeks since we submitted the last bit of information regarding that they had requested, and it should be the last bit of it, I emphasize, but one never knows, and I'll have to seed that. I just, if you would, pushed a little bit on back to say, hey, come on, let's get this done. But, everybody moves at their own pace, and we can't dictate that, unfortunately, when we're going to be the recipient of a fairly large sum of money to do this road for us, somewhere in the $7 to $8 million range. So can only push too hard.
Yep.
okay, does anyone have anything else they want to talk about? Other than, I do have to mention, I sent out a message to everybody. I haven't heard from everyone yet, but to see if we can do another Board of Finance meeting on June 11th, which is a Thursday, for the purpose of adopting this budget. And this is something new. At first, it looked like the selectmen were going to adopt it, and now it's going to be adopted by the Board of Finance. So we have to notice this final budget. It's going to go in the newspaper, and we'll have a meeting on June 11th. It should be very short, and to adopt this budget. And then the meeting that's our normally scheduled meeting for June 9th, I intend to cancel that meeting, as we're right at the end of the year. So unless anybody wants to have a meeting on June 9th.
Everybody's breaking down the doors, George.
So is June 11th okay with everybody?
June 11th works for me, George.
I'll be there.
Okay, all right. I need
Works
4
for me.
people there. Okay, good. All right, there's,
And we'll get an invite.
yes, yeah, Stacy.
Stacy will make sure you get an invite.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting of the Board of Finance.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thanks again, everyone.
All right. Have a good long weekend, everybody.
You as well.
Thanks,
Anna.
you also.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks, Stacy.
Not a problem.
Tracy, you're welcome for whatever you thanked anybody for.
Yeah, I don't know why it's.
Good
not
night,
letting me-
all.
Good night.